here. Glad to see all the brothers and sisters here. Glad to chat with man Tommy Dortch. Also earlier, before I speak, let me also say this here to some people. Let me warn some people. Don't come talking trash to the speaker before he speaks. Because I got the microphone. So this brother, Van Jones, where you at? Van, where you at, Van? Van's a Lil Mega. Lil. And Van was talking stuff. First of all, he got me really confused. He said I was a capper. I said, don't get yourself cussed down. And then he started talking. I was like, Van, this not going to end well because, you know, I talk later. I got the microphone later. You're going to get called out later. So I had to let him know, and I had to show him. And then, you know, because, you know, he ain't hopped in about 30 years because he said he got bad knees and bad hips and everything like that. And so I told him, I said, right, that's the most you can do. That's the most he can do is just wave his arms. That's it. That's it. Tommy, you should have warned him. I get paid to talk. Why would he mess with me? And so I told Van I was going to call him out. So to all the young brothers, just go ahead and just write down Alpha right now. That's all you got to do. That's Alpha, and then there are you, Bruce. So, but I told I was going to mess with you, Van. So again, I see y'all cackling over there. Don't start. I'm going to get on y'all too. And remember, I got 2 million social media followers. They will know every single one of y'all name tomorrow with your mugshots, including you, Ron Busby. I don't mind Kappas. I get y'all confused with Delta. Same colors. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Did I let that slip? My bad. See, y'all should have stayed quiet over there. Sigmas and Iotas, don't say a word. Don't say a word. Let me go ahead and we always do this. If some people can't handle it, Greek does it. It's all good. But let me go ahead and get to this, and I really want to focus on this because it really is critically important in terms of where we are today. Who in here knows the significance of the year 2043? The significance of the year 2043. Any of y'all know the significance of 2043? Any young folks up here? Yes. What you got? He said you'd be 43 years old. Okay, all right. That's fine. Factually correct. What you got? What you got?
Is that going to be like the 100th year of the 100 Black Men?
You said with the 100 year, 100 black men. No, that's not it. That's not. But it's all good. All good. The significance of 20. You can't talk because you're gonna tear something up. Yeah. I don't know how he went from I'm nervous to just give me the mic. That just contrasts. 2043 is significant because in the year 2043, it will be the year when America is a majority people of color country. That's 25 years. But if you look at where we stand today for African Americans, 2043 for us will look like South Africa today. In that you will have people of color who are the majority in America, but the majority of wealth in America will still be held by white Americans. Now, I'm saying that because when you look at where we stand educationally, when you look at the wealth gap in this country, when you look at the housing issue of this country, what we have to understand is that numerical numbers are one thing, but the question is, how are we properly positioned to take advantage of that when it happens? Which means that in the next 4 to 5 years, those who will be graduating from college in 2043 will be born in the next 3 to 4 years. And I'm putting this in this context because I need folks to understand that all of the decisions that we make today are going to have a direct impact on what our community will look like in 2043. And so we may have, you may have said, well, I gave $10,000 or $2,500 or $5,000 or $500 or $100 or $50, but do understand that what you actually did was make a down payment or an investment in what you expect to have a rate of return in the next 25 years. Talk to any financial planner. They will tell you that if you set money aside today and then you leave it in an account, it will grow over a period of time. And so in the next 15, 20, 25 years, it will be this amount if you leave it there and invest it wisely, which means that the money that we invest, the time that we invest today, if it is done right, if it is in the right place, then we expect it to grow, and then we should be able to cash out in 25 years. What I'm trying to say is that, let me make it plain, there's some of you who are sitting in this room today. You're only sitting in this room because somebody made an investment in your future 20, 25, 30, 35 years ago. They may no longer still be on this earth, but they said, I need to make sure you are going to have a life, the kind of life that you want later on. Now maybe some of y'all still are a bit confused. Think about what your mama and your daddy was doing, or your grandmother and your grandfather were doing some 20, 30, 40, and 50 years ago. You could not be sitting even in this hotel had some folk not did some stuff. See, don't forget, Thurgood Marshall could not even go to the law school at this university, yet here we stand in 2018 sitting in the very hotel ballroom of a university that denied the great Thurgood Marshall an opportunity for him to even go to law school. We are here because there are some folks who made an investment. And we have to think about it in those terms, because what we do today, every action that we take must be deliberate. When I say deliberate, I mean literally every single action. See, when I look at the fact that I have no kids, but I've raised 6 of my nieces, every action that I have taken with them has been. See, the look itself said, you lost your mind. But she understood that because she saw me reading, then she said, you know, I might want to think of something different. And so every action I took was deliberate. The same thing happens. How many brothers in here, and either you still go to the barbershop, but you might go not as frequently as you used to go, and some folk don't go at all based upon what I'm seeing out in the room. It's all good. It happens. It's all good. Because I tell you what, somebody said, well, Roland, what about your hair? I said, yeah, I had a head full of hair. I was broke. I'll take less hair today than a full hair because I was broke then, not now. But how many of you have gone to the barbershop and you've had conversations and brothers have been talking about sports, and they've been talking about how somebody's performing and how a brother plays, but when's the last time you heard somebody ask the question, young man, what are you reading? See, just think about that very question. Think about how many of you go to church every single Sunday. You go to Bible study and you pass young folks all the time. How often have you asked them the question, what are you reading? And not just what are you reading in the classroom, what are you reading outside of the classroom? See, I'm saying this because I want all of us to understand that our future as a people will be determined by what we do today. Not by what we do as individuals, but by what we do as a collective. Do me a favor, in the back of that backpack, grab Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community. And the reason I'm going to read something for you, because it was 51 years ago, when Dr. King actually, the other book, that's Gerald Horne's book on the Negro Associated Press. As you see, I always have books with me. That's it right there. It's very simple, folks. Dr. King wrote a book 51 years ago, which was actually his worst-selling book. The last year of his life was a tumultuous one when he began to oppose the Vietnam War. So he wrote the book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, where he literally laid out the blueprint in terms of what we could expect in the future as a race. In this book, he talked about, he said it didn't cost America much to allow us to be able to come into hotels, to swim in swimming pools, to go in the parks. He said, but the real question is, will America write that large check to right its previous wrongs? See, we are 1 year away from commemorating the 400th anniversary of the 20-odd Africans arriving in Virginia in 1619. we'll be focusing on that next year. When you think about 243 years of slavery, 10, 12 years of Reconstruction, 92 years of Jim Crow, which was slavery without shackles. Let me put this in perspective. African Americans have really only been technically fully free Americans for 48 years. Because prior to 1970, we literally locked out America, frozen out of everything, and we've only been able to be able to do what we've done for the last 48 years. And so where do we go from here? The king says clearly what has to happen. Earlier you heard Tommy mention fraternities and sororities. He mentioned the importance of 100 black men. But let me read for you what Dr. King said, which really, I think, jumps out. He said, quote, "There are already structured forces in the Negro community that can serve as the basis for building a powerful united front. First, he says the Negro church. Then he says the Negro press. Then he says the Negro fraternities and sororities and Negro professional associations. But then this is the king that you don't quite hear about, because the king has been turned into America's civil rights mascot as some little bobblehead figure we put on the shelf every single year and say, oh my God, he was just so nice and so wonderful, and he just loved everybody as if he was not a militant revolutionary. He said this: we must admit that these forces have never given their full resources to the cause of Negro liberation. There are still too many Negro church leaders that are so absorbed in a future good over yonder that they condition their members to adjust to the present evils over here. Too many Negro newspapers have veered away from their traditional role as protest organs agitating for social change and have turned to the sensational and the conservative in place of the substantive and the militant. If I brought that present day, what he was saying is we have too many black media websites focused on gossip and entertainment and not news and information. He then says too many Negro social and professional groups have degenerated into snobbishness and a preoccupation with frivolities and trivial activity. He was calling out our associations. And when we look at where we stand, when you look at fraternities and sororities numbering more than 2 million, when you look at the Boule, when you look at 100 Black Men, when you look at Ladies of Distinction, when you look at the Links, we have these massive organizations where we gather, where we meet, where we wear colors, where we buy artifacts, where we gather, where we take pictures. But the question is, how have we truly changed our community and prepared it for the future? So the real challenge for us leaving here is not to say, hey, we had a great program, we gave some great awards, those young men did a great job. No, the challenge for us should be, when we come back next year, what will we say that we accomplished in the previous 364 days? Because, see, I need folk in this room to understand that nobody is going to save us but us. There is no Calvary that is on its way across the ocean or across the skies or the land or whatever. Ain't nobody coming to save us. We're living in an America where you can be black and not even sit and wait on a cup of coffee at a Starbucks. We're living in an America where you can be a brother dressed to go to the prom and you will be attacked at a Waffle House. We're living in an America where you can't even barbecue at a public park without somebody calling the cops on you. And so, knowing full well what is happening across this country, that means that our collective organizations are going to have to do more. That means that if we've been unwilling to welcome in a new generation of leaders, some folk need to move aside and allow them to come in, because you can't keep running stuff if you don't have any breath to run. At some point, whether we're talking about politics or business or economics or academia, we're going to have to make some substantive critical changes to change what is happening in our community. We're going to actually have to take the time to actually build up and invest in somebody else. And when we talk about mentoring, see, I believe in the Elijah model. And that is that I'm going to sit here and see something in somebody. I'm going to say, look, if you want to keep up with me, you can get a double portion of my anointing, but you better be there when I go up to heaven, which means that you got to do some stuff if you're the mentee. See, what has happened is too many of us, frankly, have been dancing around this thing, and we have been focused on just ourselves without realizing that our impact can be far greater than it is right now. Had somebody come to me and they said, brother, don't you, actually this happened several times. In fact, it was years ago when I was on Monique's show, when it was on BET. She said, you say stuff on TV and I'm afraid you're going to get fired. I said, well, first of all, Monique, I start every job with the premise I'm going to get fired anyway. I said, because there's nothing worse than two things. There's nothing worse for me than two things on the job. Somebody who don't say nothing, go there early, stay late, scared, timid, you get laid off anyway, now you're at home mad. Then you got that parking lot militant. Oh, they militant in the parking lot. But they don't say nothing, we on the inside. See, I'm going to say all I need to say while I'm there, so if I get fired, I'm at home like, look, I said everything I want to say while I was there, and so I'm good. The reason I'm saying that because none of us know when, not only is our time up on the job, none of us know when our time is up in this life. So the real question is, what are you doing with the time that you actually have? Just this week, here in Maryland, we buried Tara Jones, 44 years old, a sister who was involved in so many different areas. She was sitting at a meeting in Baltimore and succumbed to a heart attack. The night before on Facebook, she posted she was looking for a yard man. See, the impact of your life is based upon what you do. So when people ask me, they say, well, man, you're not afraid of stuff. I said, no, I can't be afraid to say what somebody needs to say on television because there's no guarantee somebody else is going to say it. And see, when I travel around this country and when I run into brothers who come to me and they say, man, I would take your show every day and me and my son would watch your show over dinner and talk about the issues you talked about. When I've run into people and they said, I chose to run for public office after being educated by watching you. When all of you turn on CNN and when you see Angela Rye and Paris Denard and Shermichael Singleton and you see Paul Butler and Lauren Coates and you see Scott Bolton and Monique Presley and Yodit Welday, those are all folk who I put on TV first. I'm saying that because how we use our position to change our community and change America will determine what our future looks like. And so I want to challenge every single one of us, whether we are 10, 11, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, or even 83, 85, that as long as there is breath in your body, you can still contribute. If there's no point in our lives where we have done all that we can do, because when you still see folks, and I've met them, who are 80 and 90, and they are working election polls, and they are registering people, and they are raising money, and they say, baby, I might not be able to drive that van, but trust me, I can grab somebody else's hand and walk them to the polls. If we are going to have a changed America, then it is going to be on us to change it. Dr. King said black folks are here to redeem the soul of America. We are here, he said, to make America be the nation it is on paper, not the nation it is in reality. And so when you leave here, I want to challenge every single one of you to answer the most basic simple question: what am I prepared to do? I want to say to every young person on this stage, you might be sitting in a classroom right now and you have a classmate who you know is failing. Your responsibility is to go to that brother or sister and say, how can I help you not fail? Because see, you don't know who you might be saving in your classroom. You might be saving a future inventor, a future venture capitalist, a future CEO. You might be saving a future member of the 100 Black Men, and you cannot run around saying, I am my brother's keeper if you don't keep your brother. The same thing goes for sisters. We are in this by ourselves. We are fighting forces who are scared to death that America is becoming a nation of black and brown. White fear is gripping America. Numbers don't lie. We're seeing it in the Oval Office. We're seeing it in state capitals. We're seeing it as laws being changed. We're seeing it in corporate America. We're seeing it as black ad agencies are going out of business because they're destroying multicultural firms. We're seeing it where they're destroying opportunities for black businesses all across this country because they say, look, you got a black president. We don't need that stuff anymore. We literally are seeing America say, enough is enough. Well, I dare say if we went through 351 years of sanctioned slavery and Jim Crow, only been free 48 years, America, you have not paid us back for all you've gotten for free. Leaving this event should cause every single one of us to redouble our efforts to say, whether it's the 100 Black Men, whether it's fraternities or sororities or men's groups at churches, whether it's a women's group, does not matter what it is, we have a responsibility to be the savior of our people. Dr. King said, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Only you can determine what that answer will be. Will it be chaos or will it be community? I suggest we make it community. And that means sometimes taking off our Cohons and Louboutins and putting on some overalls and getting to work. The name of this is called the new, parentheses, Black America. What the hell is new?
Everything old is new.
And so when you hear that, should we be saying, as opposed to trying to create something new, trying to come up with this sort of new paradigm, is it a question of saying, no, do what we used to do moving forward?
Yeah, I don't You know, I don't think the focus should be on, quote, creating a new Black America. We have to look inward at ourselves and decide what are we prepared to focus on that we can fix amongst ourselves, as opposed to looking for someone else to try to fix the problems for us. And the reality is that we have become dependent upon looking for the government to solve challenges. This is really not complicated, folks. We have the wealth within our own community if we would simply start to invest in our own businesses and do business with ourselves. We focus on at Black Enterprise, our mantra is wealth for life. The biggest gaps we have in this country is not the education divide, it's not the digital divide, it's not the, the insurance divide, what have you, it's the wealth divide. If you in fact have wealth, all of those other things you have. And we have that wealth within our own community if we're prepared to invest back in our own businesses. But as I speak to groups all across the country all the time, I say to them, let's look at other communities. In the Jewish community, the dollar turns over 6 times before it ever leaves. In the African American community, it doesn't turn over even half, meaning by the time it lands, we're spending it somewhere else. So stop looking at, we got to create programs and other things, and this is a complicated thing. It is not. You need to decide, I'm going to take my money that I've earned, I'm going to find the Black auto dealer, I'm going to find the Black dry cleaner, I'm going to find the Black investment banker, I'm going to find the Black whatever it might be, and I'm going to put my money in with them. That's not isolating us, that's protecting ourselves. And that is reinvesting in ourselves. That's what has to happen. So it's not a new plan, it is taking the plan and doing something with it.
And Tom, the reality is that their government does serve a role, private serves a role. Look, 1973, Maynard Jackson becomes mayor of Atlanta. At that time, African Americans were receiving 0.0012% of all city contracts. Maynard Jackson comes into Atlanta, Coleman Young in Detroit, Marion Barry comes in D.C. You have this group of Black mayors who made it clear that they were going to open up those doors of opportunity for Black businesses. And that's how, when you look at the skyline of this city, Russell Construction, huge, huge part of that. And so, but that's maximizing politics, but you still have to also deal with Black-owned businesses also being able to get capacity.
Right. First of all, you got to understand that civic engagement is important, because we could not have gotten a Maynard Jackson, a Coleman Young, and those in office if our community didn't turn out. Sadly, we only had 23% of the eligible voters in this city to turn out in the last mayor's election. But the important thing about their leadership, Maynard Jackson said to us, it doesn't matter whether your name is first, second, or third on the sign outside the door. It's a joint venture. Work together. So you got Black people to understand, bringing your resources together, you can get a bigger piece of the pie. The other thing was he took on the corporate community here and said to them, we won't build a new airport until you commit to following my suggestion and lead of 25% of the procurement. We're at the time, we're over 70% of the city's population. It's amazing that today we still have the program started under late Maynard Jackson here. We're doing 37% mandated requirement in this city. No other city in this country does that. When we expanded the airport with the last $5.3 billion expansion, $1.6 billion of that went to mostly Black-owned businesses in this city. And so we've had that kind of leadership. But back to what Butch was saying, it's still important for us in our community to understand that nobody's going to give us anything, that we earned it. The government takes taxes from it. It's our money. We should not be begging for that money. But the other important part is nobody should expect that they're going to get a free meal. You got to be good at what you do. You got to be best. But we have to work together. I've been in business 24 years. My biggest challenges have come from Black elected officials and Black folks who, as I say always, Black people, understand there are those of our color who are not of our kind. And there are those of our kind who are not of our color. But we have to still understand it's on us to do our job.
Butch, we've seen about a $700,000 addition of Black-owned businesses in the past 5 years or so. We went from 1.9 million to 2.6 million But when there were 1.9 million, 1.8 million only had one employee. Of the 2.6 million, 2.5 million only had one employee. We've even seen a decrease, though, where when we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses, they average annual revenue was 110,000. Now it's 78,000. So we have more black-owned businesses, right, but their annual revenue has decreased. And so Black Enterprise obviously focuses on that. What is required to again, building capacity? People say we need more black-owned businesses. I say no, we need more with capacity.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge, 96% of black-owned businesses today are sole proprietorships, which means in effect, all you do is employ yourself. And so there's a politically correct answer and then there's the real answer. Okay,
well, I want the damn real answer.
Right, but I'm gonna give you the real answer.
Yes, yes.
The fact of the matter is the biggest challenge for African-American business today is not access to capital. And let me say that again. It is not access to capital. The biggest challenge for African-American businesses today is scale. So what happens is that we've got a series of clients. We'll put on an entrepreneur summit. We'll have 30 corporate clients who will come who are begging to come and do business with minority-owned businesses. And some of them will come to me and said, listen, I got 3 small contracts. Can you put me in touch with who I'm going to give this contract directly to this business? Well, here's a heads up. You cannot be doing sales of $500,000 and bid on a $10 million contract. So what's a small contract in corporate America, which maybe Walmart was one of our examples. They had 3 contracts. He said, apologizing to me. I got a $50 million contract, apologizing, a $200 million contract, and a $750 million contract. I said, do you know that overnight that the lowest of the contracts puts them in the BE 100s? I said, it can't operate that way. But what we have, and this is the go to what is the real problem, we have to bury our egos and combine our businesses. If Delta and Northwest can get together, and JP Morgan and Chase get together, why can't Pookie and Ray Ray get together, right? The notion that somehow or another I need to have a gold-plated business card that says I'm president, CEO, chairman, what have you, of nothing, of a business that makes $100,000, you can't deposit business cards. It may be great in the nightclub to show someone you're the chairman, CEO, but it doesn't mean it. You can't deposit it to
It's
anything.
interesting, Tommy, because I've spoken at multiple. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean,
Go ahead.
so the reality is if you come into a city and there's 3 black-owned businesses that do the same exact thing that make cups, and they're each doing 100,000, you ask yourself this question.
Right.
Would you rather own 100% of a company that generates $200,000, or would you rather own 20% of a company that generates $20 million? It's really simple arithmetic.
Well,
but if our ego is such, but I got to say to people that I'm the man, I'm the boss, then you're going to be the boss of nothing.
And Tommy, I've seen organizations that also don't drive that. In fact, I've keynoted multiple Black Chambers of Commerce events all across the country. And when they bring me in to do the keynote, I said, I want to see the program. And so when I look at the program, I go through the whole program and look at the workshop, stuff along those lines. And I would say in every instance, and I would say this in a speech, and then the person over it would be mad as hell when I'm done, I would say, how is M&A, mergers and acquisitions, not a part of this conference?
Right.
And I spoke at an event in Houston. It was very interesting. So they had these awards, and they gave 3 awards to 3 PR companies. And to your point, I'm sitting there waiting to speak, and I'm going, why in the hell there are 3 small PR companies and those 3 don't sit down and say, what if we create one major Black-owned PR company to go after the larger business? And so that barrier is there. How do we get leadership to understand they have to teach folks M&A?
Well, you look at this city, I have to give kudos to Bill Picard and his group. They bought up Atlanta Daily World and Atlanta Tribune, and they've combined that under one umbrella.
I don't get 7 black newspapers in one city.
Yeah,
that makes no sense to me.
Which is crazy. So we're beginning consolidation there. Just this week, we opened Unity Bank national bank here in Atlanta.
We started in Houston. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Case Lawal, who's a billionaire, African billionaire who started Fort Valley State, finished at Texas Southern. He's chairman of the board. They're trying now to consolidate more banks. There were over 87. Now we're down to 20 black banks. And the case there, which gets us to where we are, they can't do major loans, can't even take major instruments. I had $24 million from one of my organizations I wanted to put into a black bank. They couldn't handle the $24 million because they didn't have all the instruments. We have a $250 million retirement fund. I chair the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority that owns Grady's Health System. My board has mandated that a minimum 20% has to go to African American and minority-owned businesses. I can't put that money into any of the banks here because we have to grow them. And then finally, the important part for us, as we've said, the egos have to be left at the door. And we have to work hand in hand with the 100 black men of America. What we've done is we have a mandate to do business with our black community and entrepreneurs. Atlanta Business League did the 5% solution, but still at the end of the day, businesses are not giving us the opportunity, many of them, to be able to invest and use their services because they haven't grown to scale or capacity. That was one of the great things that the late Maynard Jackson did. When he brought businesses in, it worked. But unfortunately today everybody wants to compete as opposed to come together. We had Black Wall Street in Raleigh-Durham. We had Sweet Auburn here. We had Bill Street and others. And it worked because businesses work together. We don't need something new. That's something old that works today if we just employ it and begin to use it together.
You talked about 20 black-owned banks, and one of the things that I always study, as a person who's in media, I like to be able to connect historical realities in terms of what's happening if we're talking about politics or anything else. Right. And what we're facing 25 years away from 2043, when we become a majority-minority country, is that the three pillars in the black community are literally crumbling. For one, you mentioned black banks, so your financial institutions. You look at what's happening with HBCUs, which, Tommy, you know very well. But then the third one, Butch, is black media. And so when you talk about black newspapers, magazines, look, I had the only daily television show on a black network, which was canceled, and last day was December 21st. And so now, where do we get our information from on a daily basis? And so if you have your three pillars, finance, education, and media, that's facing a difficult situation, what is your fear as we go towards 2043 when we'll have numbers but not necessarily have power and influence?
Well, and we may have numbers, but let's not get away from the fact we're trying to address the issue of over-incarceration of black males right now. And so people are strategically preparing to make sure we don't have the power come later, and we're giving them the power to make those decisions. When you look at black and brown young men being locked up and locked away and never should be. So that's one way that they're going to deal with it. But the late Maynard Jackson, and I love him, he was a phenomenal genius, said that we'll get ahead with the ballot, the buck, and the book.
The three Bs.
The three Bs.
Which his grandfather taught him.
Right, definitely. And so when we look at today in the media to spread the word, I mean, social media can give you lies and can give you truth. And unfortunately, too many of our folks depend on social media. And some of it's good and a lot of it's mess. But when we look at what we have to do, I have dedicated myself to HBCUs. Folks can say whatever they want about these great institutions. I have 5 children, all 5 went to HBCUs. I put my money where my mouth is. But today, we're down to 103. In the early 1930s, we had 235, and there's no excuse. When Mary McLeod Bethune could start Bethune-Cookman with $7, and today we have billionaires and multimillionaires, and we don't put our money in. If you don't want to send your children to our institutions, that's fine, but send your money and support them, because there will come a day we won't be able to go there.
Building off of what you said, even in with HBCUs. Again, these are self-inflicted, much of this self-inflicted. Of HBCU graduates, 7% of them contribute back to their own HBCUs. Mm-hmm. I have friends who I went to business school with at an Ivy League school who went to an HBCU who would rather give money to Wharton Business School than they would back to Florida A&M. There's something wrong with that. And that's not someone doing that to us. That is a self-inflicted self-hate, if you will, to some degree, to say, I'm not going to go back to the institutions. Now, my father,
Morgan State,
who you know, thank God is still alive, but he is completely dedicated to Morgan State, right? He spells college Morgan State. He believes, because he said there was no other place that was going to give him an opportunity.
Right.
So his first chance, he gave $1 million to the school and said, we're going to build out, and they built a business school around him, and he's been spending his time now trying to raise money for it. But Morgan State is actually in a better position because it's a state school.
Precisely.
So as a state school, it still gets some state money. The schools that are private, HBCUs, are in a world of trouble. Right. And then we do an entire HBCU summit, and we do a thing on Tech Connect. Many of them in 2018 do not have a curriculum that deals with technology as we speak. How can you, in 2018, have a curriculum that is more focused on African American studies than is focused on technology? That's just not where the jobs are. So with all due respect, again, these are self-inflicted things. We have to make the hard decision, look within ourselves and say, what is it that we can do to make these respective changes? I believe
in case studies. And so when we talk about M&A, we talk about whether or not those particular HBCUs. Give me a couple examples, both. Who is doing it right? Where if you said, look, go look at this, go talk to this person, they're doing it right, study what they're doing.
North Carolina A&T would be my first.
Right.
Would be my first.
No. But give me a private HBCU. Because they're
HBCU.
also a public HBCU.
Well,
So give me HBCU or business, somebody you know who's doing it right, who you can say, go study that, replicate that.
I think from a business perspective, I'll talk to the business thing perspective. Although I will give North Carolina A&T this. In our Tech Connect Summit, where we've had a hackathon where we bring in a competition together, and last year we had 15 schools, this year we'll have 20. They've won each of the last 2 years. And they've won because they have an active program teaching these kids. And the reason I put together the Tech Connect Summit in the first place is because I had all these clients of mine in Silicon Valley saying, I'm searching, I can't seem to find any black people to hire. And I said, where are you looking? I said, if you're only looking at Cal, Berkeley, and Stanford, you're not going to find them. I said, if you're having difficulty finding, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring them to you so you no longer have to look. So we brought the schools to Silicon Valley, which is where we have the event, and every one of those kids got job offers. In fact, the kids from North Carolina A&T, the one brother in particular got 12 different job offers from every possible company you could think of. So if I could give one piece of advice to you about your kids and your grandchildren, focus them on technology, digital and technology. That is an unlimited opportunity.
And before you answer, Tommy, that doesn't mean they necessarily will be a scientist or be a coder, but it's, I mean, look, in the business that I'm in, we use technology. We literally are live streaming this event to multiple platforms at the exact same time, as opposed to saying, well, you know what, we're just going to record it and shoot it later. So even in media, if you don't understand technology, you'll be left behind.
80% of the jobs in technology are
STEM,
non-engineering related jobs. 80% of them. So stop the madness if I don't know coding that I can't. There's no company today that has not been impacted upon by technology.
Right.
None. Everyone has been disrupted by technology. The media business.
Yes.
Right. Black Enterprise was a magazine. You know, I have 4 millennial, not children, but 4 millennial young adults at this point. I can't quite understand them. When I say I can't quite understand them, because I'll call them, they'll text me back. Right? So they prefer to communicate in a completely different way. Well, part of that is they don't want to read the hard copies of a magazine.
Right.
That's a reality of the business that we're in. So we've had to adjust our own business to become a digital business, event business. The magazine portion of our business is the least profitable of the four elements of how we deliver content.
I mean, Essence Festival makes more money for Essence than the actual magazine.
Much more, 80% of it.
Right. No, I mean, that's just the reality. Tommy.
Let's deal, even right here in Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta University are still very strong private institutions. Most people don't realize some of the greatest prostate cancer research, not just in here but in this country, is done at Clark Atlanta University. We are one of the best in the nation, and we have over 9 patents that have been developed. You still look at Morehouse and the things that are happening there, and the folks who are going into multiple areas, even with STEM and everything in Spelman, has been tops in this nation for so many years. That's just here in Atlanta, so we can go through those, but then let's not forget that Morehouse School of Medicine and Meharry and Howard School of Medicine are still in the area, still producing over 70% of all black doctors in this nation, and you could go by discipline and find that all of the various institutions have something to offer, but it still boils down to lack of resources and our community not investing back into those institutions. And so it's on us. But curriculum, why aren't the African Americans who graduated from these institutions or who didn't in corporate America coming back helping to design programs? At Florida A&M University, I'm a trustee there. We have folks now coming back working with us in multiple areas. We've gotten over some challenges.
Right.
People wanted to condemn a great university over one incident, but when you look at our School of Pharmacy, law school and all, we're moving there. So the bottom line is we still have to reinvest and invest and make them what they ought to be and not leave them on the sideline, because when they're gone, our kids, our young people aren't going to have access to higher education.
And that right there, and then a little time left, that is exactly it. The point that I keep making is, especially in media, we will rue the day when we are asking somebody else to tell our story. When it comes to our schools, we'll rue the day when we're asking somebody else, will you please educate our children? And financially, if we do not have those institutions who are looking to invest, what do you want, last question from both of you, what do you want folks, this is where the challenge comes in, what do you want the folks in this room, the folks who are watching on streams and various platforms, what do you want them to do tomorrow when they leave here and this is over?
There's I appreciate that question, and it's, we need to stop focusing on what the problem is and the woe is we and what the solution is. So I would offer up 2 things. One is that we have to hold, and I know this is big for you, we have to hold people accountable.
That's right.
Okay? You have to hold people accountable.
People and institutions.
Right. And when I say hold people accountable, meaning this. If you're a senior executive in corporate America and all you're worried about is yourself and not those that are behind you that need the opportunity to be brought up, you are in fact a worse than having a racist sitting in that position. Because in many ways what you've done is you're blocking up and you're providing license to the people who are around you who may not look like you to say, well, if he's able to, or she is able to keep people back, I certainly have no reason not to. So hold those people accountable. When the door is opened, you got there not because you're the smartest person in the room, because someone else died for the benefit of you being in that position, and you have a responsibility to make sure that you're holding up and bring up the next group. Second is for those who are sitting on corporate boards. And my father told me this a long time ago when I first got onto a corporate board. He said, Butch, do not get confused. They did not run out of smart white people to put on boards. They put your black behind on this board for you to advocate on behalf of other people that look just like you. And if you're not going to do that, then don't ever join a board. And that is a responsibility. So if I challenge people who are sitting in this audience to say, if you're sitting in your corporate seat and you're the vice president, don't be so happy that you're sitting in this corporate seat as the vice president. You can be replaced like that. And more importantly, you need to make sure you're advocating every day when you wake up for what black-owned business, what black person can I help to bring up and make sure they get promoted to do. And for those of you who are fortunate enough to ever sit on a corporate board, if you're not challenging management and not challenging those other board members to make sure we're getting contracts, shame on you. You have that responsibility.
Tommy Dortch.
All right, real quick. I want everyone in here to commit themselves to at least give a minimum 1 hour a week to a young male or young female in your community. We need to mentor them. Young people aren't born bad. They learn bad behaviors from adults, and we can't sit and continue to watch our young future leaders in the future of this nation to be locked up and locked away because they made a simple mistake. And we try to do that in the 101. Start getting involved in the life of a young person. We have a mentoring program that leads to entrepreneurship, thanks to Wells Fargo, our pathways to success. We got to grow new entrepreneurs. The other thing that's important, when Unity Bank opened, I opened a bank account at Unity Bank. I have a bank account at Citizens Trust Bank. We need to invest in our own communities. And last but not least, HBCUs. I have 5 scholarships at 5 HBCUs. I have 5 honorary doctor's degrees in addition to that. But I put my money into these institutions, and we need to invest. So quit worrying and complaining about what others aren't doing and start doing it ourselves. Do business with our businesses. And if they aren't doing right, hold them accountable. Talk to them. I tell my folks, if I go to a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's in Buckhead, then I expect the same service in Bankhead in Atlanta. And so if we don't speak up and speak out, our businesses can't get better. But we don't do that to white-owned businesses. They mistreat us, we go right back. When our black businesses, we have a bad experience, we say we're not going back. We got to work together. That's my only formula.
Final comment. A lot of people here may be thinking, well, this is what Operation Hope should be doing. The reality is, when you leave here, what is it that you are going to actually do? This conference should actually serve as your personal annual report. What I mean by that is, when you come back next year, you should ask yourself before the first day, what did I do in the last 364 days when it came to the issues that we brought up? If you make a commitment today, what are you going to do beginning tomorrow? You should be able to come back next year and say, this is what I personally accomplished in the last year. If you come back next year and you go, dang, I committed to do this, I got busy, and this is what happened, you're the damn problem. Because you can't make a commitment and then not follow through with the commitment and then say, I wonder why nothing has changed. This is not only John's job. This is not only the job of Operation Hope staff. It's not only Tommy's job or Butch's job. It's every single person's job in this room. If people do not act as a collective, then all of the stuff we've talked about for the last 3 days has been a complete waste of time. And for me, I do not waste my time. Everybody must learn to do their part. Butch Graves Jr., Tommy Dortch. Thanks a lot.
I just have 2 more words to say. Obama out.